Two of Giovanni Manu as the Detroit Lions developmental offensive tackle at the left tackle position. And today we're going to be diving into his first game of 2025 against the LA Chargers. Is he progressing? Let's get right into it. So today we're going to be diving into Giovanni Manu, picking up right where we left off from last year's preseason, where I thought he had a strong preseason outside of really the Pittsburgh game, where they just continued to attack him around the arc with speed. Well, this is an opportunity for him to build on that. They told us that he came in as a different body type, looking like a different person, and I would say by just seeing him on film, he does look leaner. He looks very athletic, very nimble as a mover. Now, he showed a lot of that athleticism last year. That being said, there's still a lot of areas that we needed to see growth last year. So this was the first opportunity to see if he's taken those steps, because we heard a lot of positives about him during last season, but we just didn't get to see it. And now we are. And I think this is the perfect time because of the Dan Skipper injury. It doesn't sound like it's super serious with Dan Skipper, which is a big positive because he also played well against the Chargers. He was very good for us this past season. I'm very confident with Dan Skipper as our backup tackle. But the developmental piece going into year two, where we really need to start seeing that kind of growth. Now, at least at this point, it sounds like Jamarco Jones is still above Manu, the veteran that he's pushed him back to left tackle, like he played last preseason, perform him, and continue to build and stack good games. And I got to say, I think this was a very good start for him. There's still a lot of areas that probably want to get better, but this was a really good way to get things started against the LA Chargers. So let's dive right into it. 24 snaps, we'll show a few of them. But the big thing for me was pass protection. This is where he shined, and I think he really shined here with his patience. Now, you're going to see the body type. He looks very nimble as a mover, very light on his toes, very balanced. And he showed some of that this past season, but very quick off the ball. But the big thing for me is the patience that he constantly played with. So first off here, we're going to get a little bit of a slot help, which is going to squeeze this rusher inside a touch here. And we're going to get this 45-degree kick step. It's good quickness off the ball, creates a little bit of depth here. The key for me is a couple of things. First off, consistent base width. He did a really nice job of being balanced and his ability to redirect and be reactive with a balanced base width that continuously was in kind of the same spot. And then that upfield push, being patient to not declare early against an upfield push, really make sure the edge rusher was declaring that that's where he was going to go before he ended up flipping his hips. So just like this, right away here, we get a good set right off the ball, gets into that second step. We get that first upfield jab, and we're going to come right back inside here and attacking that offensive tackle center line on this play. And as you can see, the patience, his hands are constantly holstered. Now, I did want to see at times like maybe get a little more crafty with his hand usage, kind of throw off the rhythm of a pass rusher. He felt very reactive and maybe overly patient at times with allowing guys to potentially get in his chest and jolt him back. And you'll see with some of his body weight that it can tend to shift a little bit, which I think gives him some problems as well. But you see gaining a little bit of depth here with that upfield push, but not flipping his hips. And then he's able to deal with this inside move, ready hands for the stab on the inside, and then he's able to drop it off and help out with this stunt. You see the lateral movement because the base is pretty wide through contact. It's just very balanced, great redirect. Now, he does get punched in the chest here, and this is where you're going to have to look for maybe being able to create a quicker drop step, settle yourself down a little bit faster. He feels like he did rise a little bit as he was moving laterally, and then he redirected off of that to open himself back up for this stunt around the arc. I did like that he played it well. He's really good within his offensive line here, but you're going to see he gets jolted in the chest, comes in a little bit further on the outside, which is kind of where he feels a little bit more comfortable with that outside hand, inside hand, but he's a little bit tall here. So he gets jolted in that chest, and you can see that the body weight, maybe we can drop it down just a touch faster. I think that could be a room for improvement there. But overall, good first rep here. Now we get to a run blocking play. We're going to have him reach block this backside three technique on a zone rushing play. And while you'll see the really detailed entry point angles, right, there's seemingly a focus on how am I attacking this defensive tackle, and you get that. You get the upfield push. He's going to try to get right on the hip of this defensive tackle, and he does. Now, it's a touch slow here, but he does get on his hip. What I like, though, is the way that he runs his feet through contact. Now, the big thing about running his feet through contact here is I don't always feel like he shows a ton of force through that initial entry through the hips, but I do like the ability to sustain the block, the ability to just drive and run, and you'll see that here, right? He keeps his pads pretty low here. He runs through his hips. He gets those feet moving, gets a good entry point to the point where he's able to not only reach the block, but ultimately wrap himself back around the block and continue to work on the play. It's very polished, very fluid as he's running through contact right there to create some sustainability. Now against this his slot defender in this wide 9 setup, standing up on the outside. He's got a little bit of inside help here with Kenny Yeboah, who's going to chip him before he gets out, so he's got to protect that inside, play a little bit safer to that. But I love that lingering drag hand, that right hand that settles back in, that's playing off of the offensive line support that he has, not giving up that inside angle. He kind of takes that away, and you're going to see that with this footwork. He's continuing to gain depth, but he's not opening himself up. So now we're going to get this infield push, this inside push that's going to be forced to wrap back outside because he's playing with a really good angle towards the inside, and you get that outside stab, but notice how he doesn't lunge. There's no overreaction here. You get an outside stab. He moves his feet with it, but they're so connected together that they're balanced, so he can deal with contact, and then he can redirect right back off it. Now, again, he gives up a little bit of a jolt here, but it's very ready with his hands to get his hands back inside. So ultimately, I just love the footwork in a lot of these spots. Let's get to another pass protection rep here. Here we're going to get more of a short set here. He's going to attack the edge rusher, and he gets off the ball in a hurry. He's get those 2 steps in. He's on him in a hurry. He has those hands holstered and ready to go. Now he's patient. He's going to throw the second strike after the defensive end or the edge rusher throws here. That's when he's going to react and get his hands on the shoulder, and we're going to see him drop down and create that anchor towards the inside. So we'll see him reset his hands, gets that inside hand on the shoulder, drops that left hand, and you're going to see it connect with his footwork. Watch it connect through contact. There's the contact, drops that left hand, creates that drop step with his footwork here, and now the anchor has settled in as the weight tends to shift right back forward there. So I love the anchor that he created, the quickness off the ball in this spot. Maybe you can get an earlier stab here where you could throw off the rhythm. That way the edge rusher can't really dictate terms in this spot. But ultimately here, you're seeing he's pretty balanced. You see the quick feet, the short area quickness that he carries, and that ability to react off of it. And again, for the edge rusher here, you get an upfield push. He starts to declare through that second stab upfield, and Manu maybe is a tick late to kind of react to that. And in this spot, I would say really you would want to see him maybe throw more of his hips into the entry here and just kind of shut this thing down on the arc rather than the flip, which it creates a little bit of a softer entry point. If he could just kind of jolt his hips through contact, maybe a little bit more proactive with his hands to kind of stab this and shut it down. But ultimately, he's still balanced. He's able to roll with his hips here and then create that recovery for an anchor as the rep rolls along. So still a lot of positives throughout that rep. We'll go to another look here in pass protection. This time we get more of a little bit more around the edge. He has that inside tight end help, which is going to scream this thing out a little bit wider. You got the inside rusher. He's going to drop that off. Running back can slide over and pick that up, but he's got a little bit wider to deal with here. So again, you're getting that upfield push. It's just not incredibly aggressive, but you get a little bit of an upfield push, so he's patient with to match his footwork with it. Then as he declares his hips, that's when you're going to get that speed to power setup. But what I love here is, again, just the recovery within his base. Watch his base here. You can see how he tends to rise a little bit, and I think his body weight will shift a touch, which can be an issue, right? So it's like, okay, let's maybe settle in just a touch faster here. But ultimately, if you watch his ability to recover, he gives up that chest, gives up the jolt, but look at this. He's able to drop back on his footwork here, quickly reset, and then watch that left hand. It's hard to see it, but you're going to see it pop through there. Right hand on the shoulder, left hand resets inside. It connects incredibly well with his footwork, and then he's able to shift that weight forward through his hips, thrust it forward, and settle down his ground there, right? So again, same technique essentially on both of those plays. This time, he's got to deal with an inside move, have to essentially be prepared to pass this off, and that's what he is here. So right off the ball, a little bit more patient. Look how he doesn't overreact, right? His hips are turned a little bit, but you're working through that slide protection, so he's working off the rest of his offensive line. Again, that lingering drag hand to kind of keep connected there, protect the inside, but also deal with that outside rush. Outside rusher doesn't want to press that far upfield, so he's going to break back inside, and Manu's right there to deal with it. You can see the footwork short area stays connected. Now he can step back inside, pass it off, and again, on contact, right? Strong in his base. Hands it off, and then he's able to redirect and wrap right back around to the outside rusher. Back to the run game. This is where I want to see him maybe create more consistent thrusting power through his hips on entry, right? A little bit more of a jolt, a little bit more of a knockback himself. This one feels a little bit inconsistent with just how he actually enters into contact here, but you're going to see flies off the ball. He's essentially just going to kind of hinge this thing around the edge, but he's going to jolt him off his spot, so you do get some power there. He's quick off the feet. He's quick off his feet. Gets into contact, drops his hands underneath, and then he's immediately going to try to run. So as he enters in, short area quickness, gets contact, and now he's trying to run through those hips. He's a little bit upright, so I don't think you get the cleanest jolt. You also don't create, I think, a ton of force through the ground on this play. Nothing that's incredibly sustainable, which is why he ultimately kind of slides off as he tries to run. He gets pretty upright here. His hands are fairly outside on this play as well, and as he tries to run forward, now he's just slipping off the block. So I do like the intent to really strain to kind of keep this block and run forward, and you get a little bit of a jolt early, but it just isn't as smooth and as clean there to be able to maintain that as the rep goes along. Staying on the ground game, though, again, a backside zone look here. He's going to squeeze up that 3 technique, who jumps back inside, but notice his body weight. shifts over his chest, shifts over his toes, and now he's in a spot where he has to climb. It's not as clean. He can't redirect as smoothly here, and he's unable to bounce upfield to the next level. I did like his vision upfield to the next level. He felt like he was actively trying to kind of recognize where he needed to be, where he had to hit his landmarks. So I did like that. I could appreciate that, and I love the quickness off the ball. He is very fast. I mean, he's very fast in that backside stance, which gets the defensive tackle to jump back inside and clear him out of the play. But it's the next act. It's getting up to the next level, and the balance there, which is a little bit thrown off. The footwork is all over the place. He's not really square anymore as he's starting to climb, and he's unable to cleanly connect. So I do like the vision, just unable to cleanly connect up to the next level. We're getting kind of a slow played edge attack here. So again, we're going to get this played a little bit slower out, has some inside help, so he's going to create his depth with that. Maybe you need to be a little bit faster because I think he gives up kind of a soft edge here just by some of the slower upfield push towards the outside. He's patient, doesn't ever feel it declare upfield, so I understand that. But I think in terms of the depth created was a little bit soft here because once you get that top of the rush inside outside, he does a nice job of mirroring with that right inside. Now all of a sudden his hips start to roll with it. Now he's in a good spot there, hands ready, gets a punch, and he's able to drive him out of the pocket, a touch here, and stay connected. Maybe just need to be a little bit quicker with the depth. That way he can have a little bit of a larger pocket for Hendon Hooker. But still, this was a really solid rep, and again, the patience just got on full display in a spot like that. We got a couple more to look at here. This one, backside zone play. Again, let's just seal this thing down and watch the quickness, the reactive quickness from his feet here. Gets off the ball quickly, but watch him here through contact, right? Stays low. He's intensely keeping his pads down, really working to do that. And then through that contact, you see the contact balance, the knee bend, and then watch those fast feet settle in. Hands get underneath. Let's seal this block, and we're going to halt it right there through the hips. That was so smooth on the backside. Now, he didn't sustain it as long through the strain there. Once he settled down and kind of created that latch, he allowed his defender to kind of get away from him, creating that latch ultimately. But I love the early positioning in this spot. And then the two edge rushes. Probably his worst rep was the last one, but he got set up by a couple of different spins, so it was great looks for him. Inside spin this first time. I love how he handled this. Now, there's an inside stunt that ends up creating kind of the pressure on this play, but this inside spin he handled well. Again, you get an upfield push that's fairly aggressive, but then he starts to attack that center line. And once he does, Manu's patient to not open himself up. Feet stay connected together. Base width is in a good spot to redirect. You get a little bit of a short step outside where his body weight tends to shift a touch here. He's still in a really solid spot. His feet don't get too wide or split apart where he can't move, so he's able to redirect with it. Now you can see his hands. He's pretty patient with his hands, just continues to reset, right? He gets in front of his man, he mirrors his man, the first hands don't connect, but he resets, and now he's trusting his feet to win. Trust his feet to win, laterally, steps back in front. Now again, the pressure gets created because of the stunt, but he did a nice job. However, the next rep is where we saw him give up a little bit of something, but it was the recovery that saved the day, because now we're going to get an inside setup to an outside spin, which is a great counter off of what was just thrown, so I do love that. Quick off the ball here, you get that outside setup, again, really getting through that center line. So Manu's in a similar spot here, a little bit further out with that drop step. You're going to get that inside stab, and this is where he gets pretty reactive to it, right? He starts to settle back inside. Again, the hands are fairly predictable. I would like to see some more unpredictability, throw off the pace of a rusher a little bit here. Fairly predictable when he's going to throw, so his hands don't really do much in this spot, and they get chopped down pretty effortlessly, but he's still square to the line, so he's able to laterally move. It's just that spin doesn't connect. Now he's off balance, but look at his ability to recover. This is incredible. He's able to recover, stay in front through the contact, quickly get his feet back in place, and he halts his man right in front of him without really ever getting his hands connected. So here you would like to see maybe a faster ability to create an anchor, to drop step quickly, like in a hurry, like let's settle this thing down, and also maybe connect our hands a little bit better, or just change up the pace a little bit of that rusher so he can't just run his game here. But in terms of being able to just mirror his man, that was on full display, got back in front, and did just enough for Hooker to get that ball off deep. I thought this was a big step for Giovanni Manu. I thought he looked really good body type wise. You saw adequate lateral movement. I want to see more consistent force created, but you saw real discipline to where he was getting to in terms of his landmarks. The patience was on display. The mirrorability was on display. A lot of positives there, and that's a great first step. Now I want to see him continue to get attacked around the arc, and I think we're going to get a lot of reps going forward, especially this week with the injuries. Not having Dan Skipper would be an excellent opportunity for him to play a ton, and for guys like Hutchinson that will absolutely bully you back to the quarterback, which we've heard sound like that happened where Hutchinson drove him back to Jared Goff by getting in his chest. One, that's a tough matchup, but that weight shifting, being a little bit open, maybe not throwing off the pace of an edge rusher, that kind of thing may need to get dialed in a little bit because you will get jolted back with that speed to power. So how does he handle that going forward? But ultimately, I think this was a really positive step after a very positive preseason performance last year where he just got better and better each game.